Right. Okay. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome all of you back once again to our second ever live stream for this channel. And um, I really didn't have particularly too much to say. In fact, there was like a lot of things I wanted to sort of like maybe discuss about some of the things that just sort of covered today. From the fact that Daniel Lawson once again sort of had to. Well, I don't think it's going to be very long before Daniel Lawson goes back to jail because, well, I'm actually going to check right now whether or not there's been like an update on Daniel Lawson. Let's see what we got. Daniel Lawson wiki. Go to the wiki. Code red. An incident followed. Yeah. Okay. So as of this point, literally nothing has been changed, and well, somehow I doubt that there's going to be much else like breaking news out of this before like the day's over and stuff like that. So I'm definitely certainly one of the things I was just hopefully like considering about probably what might happen is that owing to because of the songs being played yesterday, it means that the entire live section has been like disabled, and all the things for like it's been blocked worldwide. So I'm gonna get to work to try and see if I can like just cut out the segments so it can still remain up live. It's not much, but it's the only way I could think of like actually trying to get the some of the videos back up online. So now that we're sort of like a little bit back on track, I wonder if we could just sort of like I don't know really. To be honest, I'll not lie to you guys. I'm actually quite hungry, and outside of being hungry, I'm just sort of wanting to like I don't know have because like to be honest, I've really not like ate much in the last number of days, and I'm just sort of like no, it's not just because I'm slightly broke. Well, okay, maybe somewhat, slightly, a little, but it's just not really that's you know what I mean? I'm just sort of hungry and I don't quite know what I'm supposed to do. None of the stores are open, so literally it's like nothing until at least tomorrow morning at the very least. But now I think I can hold up in that time. So yeah, once again to reiterate, hungry. Um, I don't get paid until at least Friday, I believe, because I get paid at the end of the month, and well, the situation we look up right now is that because it's Sunday, I'll probably get paid on the 29th. So I can easily make the 29th. Don't get me wrong. I just sort of look. It's just a little bit of like a boring situation to be in, where I've basically got to wait a good couple, like at least because I'm not back at work till Wednesday, so Wednesday should be fine. First so basically it's only like 2 days. That's all I gotta like hold out for, I suppose. So there's that. So I suppose want to know what like at this point is that um we covered some of the things about Daniel Lawson, and we also covered some of the things about well, it was largely a lot about actually Daniel Lawson, more things considered. But I'm also just kind of like wondering right now, what if we go to like Quickville Guardian to see if like there's anything been updated on his YouTube channel? So I don't believe there is, and well, curiously, oh god, what's this? It's a lot of like the live. It's like his YouTube shorts. So while all this is going on as well, I'm gonna actually take a little bit of a look see at something as well. Is that the actual video we did when we took a look at Chris trying to lay it to the people from Hasbro? Chris's video got about like 11,000 views, and now I'm sort of like I'm almost in the mind of like just going to see what I got in comparison. It's just literally nothing more than just like curiosity, I suppose, on balance. So okay, Go man, go It's the only problem is I literally have to go to like my YouTube Studio app on my phone just to see what's going on. So Daniel Larson's friends. Okay, so sometimes he aligns with numbers with stars. Magic is just a word. Polygon content invisible. You know, things that, well, they are what they are. 2.4 thousand. Okay, it's I didn't think it was going to be nearly as high as that, but I knew that like people had got round to commenting on it every so often. So, I to be honest, I don't really know what to do. Like, is that what is it we should like talk over, or is that like actually I know we could. I suppose there's like maybe one thing we could try out. I don't know. Maybe it's just to like break the monotony a little bit. So that should do it. So I suppose you may be wondering at this point what all of this is. This is just the IDRL Labs .com channel, and one thing I kind of wanted to just try out, maybe just to like try out certain things, is just to like go through. Actually, I know what would be a better idea, to be honest. We mastered. What's the? I'm trying to find like the specific one about all the bosses. So Elden Ring included. Okay, this is this going to be including like what's it called? Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. So, oh my god, there's going to be like so many of them. Well, oh my, what do you reckon, guys? Do you reckon I should go through this? Because like, well, to be honest, oh my god, there's like so many of them, and it's taking so long for the thing to actually load. So, all right, I think we should like maybe we should do it. Yeah, actually, that's. Oh, hang on. Okay, so here we are, and I don't think that the rate of this camera might be looking a little bit slower right now, but well, it's a good thing that again, look at all of these bosses, and yep, it keeps going. So okay, so just to confirm, ladies and gentlemen, is that there's at least like 7 tiers from S plus S A B. It's basically you sort of know how these sorts of things work. So the first boss that we actually got to take a look at is the old monk. Now from Demon Souls. So old monk is the what this is the one where you have to like fight an actual player, or you have to like fight I think he's like a lot of the Demon Souls bosses are just sort of like very whatever, I suppose, when it comes to like trying to work out just a little what these things actually are worth. And I think a lot of the Demon Souls bosses are sort of like very, very average on balance. So I'm not too sure of like how highly these things are going to rank. The Adjudicator boss fight. This is the one where you have to kill the bird. Um, Probably slightly worse than the old monk. The old hero, maybe slightly better than the old monk or things. This is the one where you have to like wear the ring that makes become like a deaf. No, it's where it makes your footprints silent. Storm King, however, is pretty cool. So I think actually this is the one where you have to like use Storm Ruler, and you just sort of like take out his little minions, and then you take out the big guy himself. Leechmonger is there's no challenge to Leechmonger, so he's actually, you know what, I'm gonna rate him actually quite in a D, because no, I'm no joking. There's like no challenge to Leechmonger whatsoever. Dirty Colossus, maybe again, there's no challenge to the Dirty Colossus either, and there is the only real challenge with the Adjudicator is that if you don't quite know if you're meant to like shoot the birds, then it just sort of it's just boring. Maiden Estrella, the fight against Vingard is a little bit more interesting. I like the fact that again it's more described as like a lore boss where you have to Vingard, and then you have to sort of just like take the demon soul away from Estrella. So I think actually probably Raider is actually a little bit higher because again, you're not fighting fighting Estrella, you're fighting her servant. The Penetrator, maybe a little bit like. Have you noticed as well? We're sort of like grouping a lot of these together because I think like for me, like a lot of the Demon Souls bosses are sort of. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you what. I've got a better idea. I'm actually thinking about like ranking these just a little bit lower because some of these are quite. I don't think they're as good as quite a lot of like because the category for like a lot of higher bosses is like to be substantially larger than it will be for other ones. The Blue Dragon boss, this is just an obstacle when you fight on the bridge to get like a very specific ring that makes you overpowered incredibly early in the game. Old King Allant. Uh, it seems a little bit more artificial, but I suppose there is a bit of a unique challenge than compared to Penetrator, I suppose. The Vanguard Demon. Okay, the actual first boss of the game. Again, I get I suppose the way it like opens up and how you can't really win or lose really the first time you fight it. You can't beat it, but I don't know, it's just not particularly very interesting. King Allant when he's the when he's actually like inside I think this is of course when he's actually inside the old one. This is probably I actually am going to suggest that actually you know what I think that when you have to fight King Alon from inside the old one, this is probably in my opinion the worst boss. I think probably one of the worst bosses they've ever done because there's nothing really to this. Primeval Demon, not really a boss. Phalanx is again like probably slight worse again. Tower Knight's pretty cool as a boss. But again, it's sort of the problem when you're trying to rank a lot of the Demon Souls bosses is that a lot of them are mostly gimmick fights, but some of them are kind of okay. So I suppose like Tower Knight maybe just maybe for like spectacle, I suppose he's like higher than Adjudicator, I guess. Armored Spider, maybe slightly better than Adjudicator again. You're noticing again, but trust me, I bet by the time we get to like Dark Souls 2, a lot of these bosses are going to be a lot low on the list. So, Flame Lurker, I'd say it's probably maybe even possibly a B tier fight because Flame Lurker is like it's easily the hardest fight in Demon Souls, but it's like it's the only real boss that actually has a second phase. Dragon Guard. I'm actually gonna say this is. I think Dragon God is actually worse than the fight when you have to fight Alont inside the old one because there is no challenge to Dragon God whatsoever, and anybody who's plays that will know that as well. Fool's Idol, I think this is also one of the worst ones. There's just it's not the and that's the thing as well. Some of these are good because the gimmick to them is a bit challenging and it makes you think and like adapt a little bit more differently. Some of them are just not hard and there's nothing interesting to these fights. And the Fool's Idol is just the gimmick is more interesting than the fight than what it should be. And finally, the Man Eater or the Man Eaters. This is like the first two boss. This is like a double boss fight. Well, no, it's where you fight two NPCs on a bridge. Maybe slightly higher because well, actually fighting on the bridge is significantly more difficult because of how narrow it is. But yeah, I'd say that's like okay. So that's like the Demon Souls I'm satisfied with, and we're not including any of these because those aren't bosses. The Primeval Demon is definitely not, and these are just like more hazards than anything else. Ornstein and Smo, okay, easily like we're putting this like at least all. He might possibly be the lowest S plus boss in the whole of Dark Souls in the whole of From Software games. because he's I remember literally a couple of days ago to do like after about a whole year to do another deathless run in the first Dark Souls game. Ornstein and Smo, I think I choked on Ornstein and Smo, and I had just about everything I needed to actually get past Gwyn by that point. I was confident in being Gwyn by that point, but you can't stack with Ornstein and Smo. And bear in mind, when I say Deathless Run, that's including the DLC as well, and we'll be getting to that once it comes up. And curiously enough, we go from the best fight to the worst. Well, the worst, the worst sort of fight in Dark Souls, Pinwheel, where I'm saying he's probably like maybe like in the E tier because again the when you get like the masks that Pinwheel has later on in the game, they're actually a really cool addition, and it makes the lore and the backstory is like really cool for Pinwheel. But it's not difficult. Gravelord Nito is maybe I'm gonna say maybe like high C. He's a pretty high C tier boss. Sif the Great Wolf. This is where you have to fight Artorias' loyal pet, who stands watching over her master's grave. Maybe slight. I'd say it's better than Nito. I don't think it's sort of here because as we're going to get further into this list, you may notice a small pattern of the fact that actually there's a difference between a lot of things that are really good for lore reasons. There are things that are spectacular for like difficulty. There's a separate tier as well for things that can do all of them, which is probably why maybe Ornstein's will be a little bit low on the list the longer we go into this. But there are so many different scenarios and so many different ways in which any one can be like the top of the list. But you do have to be a considerable amount of them. The Four Kings. The Four Kings is, I'd say, that's a good spot for the Four Kings because the Four Kings is this is the famous first edition of a DPS test. The idea is that you have to about 4 of the same NPC that have a lot of health, and they spawn on like after 30 seconds. So you have to kill one very quickly before the second one comes in, and then the third one. So there is a significant like challenge to this boss. I'm not too sure if like the challenge is like because the arena is just like this giant black void in the bottom of the world. So it's I don't know. Maybe if there was like any talk about with the Four Kings, then maybe, but no. Demon Fire Sage, also one of the worst bosses they've ever done as well, because it's it's a second reskin of the Asylum Demon. And by the time we get to the Asylum Demon, I'm it will only just rank slightly higher. The Centipede Demon is just sort of this is just like it's a nothing fight, the Centipede Demon, because the design is cool, and I suppose maybe if the arena had like more platforming to it, if there was like more spaces where you could actually jump around and fight the centipede from like different angles, or if you broke off different parts of it, it might be a little bit more interesting, but he won't come to that. The Bed of Chaos. Okay, so curiously enough, I did actually for a very long time work on a list, very much like this one, ranking every single FromSoft, and there was never, well, specifically to the original Dark Souls trilogy, there was never an occasion where I felt the Bed of Chaos was not the worst fight, because because you guys know this, I know this, the Bed of Chaos is literally the single worst boss that From Software has ever done, which is ironic considering that the fact that this was not even the first time they tried a boss like the Bed of Chaos, which also explains, Dragging God is in the F- tier. Guys, we have got some good coming. Seath the Scaleless, however, is sort of not really this, so I'd say for it just doesn't do anything really, Seath, and it's just kind of like it's. I'd say maybe like perhaps, but maybe better than the armored spider, I suppose. The stray demon, basic. I like the stray demon only slightly more than the demon fire sage, and the asylum demon is probably on Daniel. I agree. It's amazing how fast he can actually run. Well, it's you know what I mean. It's you spend when he Daniel's mostly been spending a lot of his adult life on the run or looking over his shoulder. So, thank you so much, by the way, for joining us as well. You'd Gax. That's pretty cool. Okay, Asylum Demon. Not really too much to it, unfortunately. It is the first like actual boss of Dark Souls, and I do like the part where you have to like run away from it. But once you figure that out, it's just kind of it is what it is. Crossbreed Priscilla. Probably maybe slightly better than Penetrator because its invisibility gimmick is pretty cool, but I don't know. I often feel like by the time I get to Priscilla, I'm absolutely not in any way, shape, or form to like put up with it. So I just want to like get rid of her as quick as I can. Dark Sun Gwendolyn. A high E tier, I suppose. Because it's fighting. It's the gimmick to the fights a little bit. It's a bit more interesting than it sounds. And look at that. We even get his old man, Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. Now, I think Gwyn might be is probably going to be like the first. But now I'm even sort of like looking like at Ornstein and Smo, and should Ornstein and Smo be like downgraded a little bit? Like maybe we're moving into like S tier, because the S plus tier is like going to be a very very exclusive club. And it's not just going to be for best boss fights in single game, in like individual games. So don't be surprised to the illusion that the fact that you won't be seeing any DS2 bosses in up there. Sanctuary Guardian. I love the Sanctuary Guardian boss fight, and even the part where you can even fight two of them with the Soul of Artorias. I think it's very very difficult. It's essentially like the Sith boss fight, except way harder. Knight Artorias. Now, despite again its like infamous for its difficulty, I suppose Artorias is better, I suppose, than the Sanctuary Guardian. I'm pretty cool with that. Black Dragon Calamite. This is another one that's I think probably. Actually, no. I do think I prefer the Sanctuary Guardian to Calamite, because when you actually get to Ulasil, the Sanctuary Guardian is such a dramatic opening to the actual to Ulasil, to the DLC, and that's like fantastic. So we get Artorias, and by the way, in case you're also wondering, Manus is curiously enough better again. So I think that's actually really, really kind of funny. The fact that we've got all of the DLC bosses for Artorias, and they're all aligned like this. So yes, I think Manus is it's the single hardest fight in the first game, no question. Artorias has the best lore. Sanctuary Guardian has you get some really cool bonuses as well. And then, of course, with Calamite, you get the Calamity Ring. That's the only reason why Calamite is the worst boss of the DLC, because of that one stupid ring. It literally Taurus Demon. Not too much to say about the Taurus Demon. I suppose I always love the fact that whenever I try to do like deathless runs, and I can kill the Taurus Demon in like one hit with a +10 Zweihander. So that's very satisfying. But again, it's sort of just the arena for this one is a bit more interesting than the actual boss. Bell Gargoyles. For its position and for what exactly its gimmick is, actually, I'm perfectly fine with it being this high, because if you can beat the Bell Gargoyles without taking any damage, you could get the axe, you could get the helmet, you could get its shield, and you could even get its halberd. So you could get four whole items, basically a gargoyle's entire weapon set and armor set, if you beat it by cutting off its tail and not taking a single hit. It's a bit of a frantic departure, but again, if you have like a +10 weapon and have like the gold pine resin for your like big two-handed ultra great sword, you can cut this thing down immediately. Daniel Lawson's feet are well built and well used, you could say, where almost weather worn. Of course, any pain he would have not been felt until he stops moving. Well, unfortunately, you can't live the rest of your life just not run. You got to you got to stop at some point. You know, you can't spend the rest of your life just running away. If that makes sense. So let's move on, and we're almost done with the DS1 bosses. Moonlight Butterfly gets like, I think it's actually, to be honest, I think the butterfly is actually worse than the reskins of the Asylum Demon, because you just sit there doing nothing. Capra Demon. Um. Slushy. When's the first VTuber stream? I want to see you and Anime Go talking about LOL. Actually, who? I didn't even bother to check. Is like Slushy like a VTuber or something? I never even thought to ask, because I'm yeah. It's not that I didn't know exactly who was going to be like coming down here and stuff like that. It's just sort of how these things like come to be. Okay, so Capra Demon. Uh, Capra Demon. I suppose maybe behind the Vanguard Demon. I had to like really think about whether it was worth it. I mean, it's got the worst arena, a very basic moveset, the stupid dogs that begin the fight with him is a lot of things. I would rate this maybe somewhere, maybe even better than Maneater if it wasn't for every single, all of those other problems knock down the Capra Demon by at least 3 slots. The Gaping Dragon, again, this runs into like the problem of just hit. I possibly get a really cool axe by cutting off its tail, but there's again not really much to this. What is much, however, to this is Quelaag. That's a pretty high. I'd say, again, no, its lore is pretty more is much more, I think, more interesting than the Four Kings and the Belt and like Nido. And the reason again why Estrella is like positioned where she is because she's not tech. So that's like, I'm actually kind of like a little bit impressed by how things are like going out, because um and by the way, in case you're wondering why Gwyn is like ranked above all the DLC bosses, is because I think outside of the fact that his moveset's pretty conventional, it's also the story and the fact that it's all sort of like culminated with Gwyn, compared to the DLC bosses, because the DLC was something that they just spend time conjuring up later. But I think Gwyn was sort of what they knew immediately they wanted it to. That's why Gwyn is like ranked better than any of the DLC bosses from the first game. But then again, also Ornstein and Smo, just because it's the single best fight easily. And I will not get the Ceaseless Discharge. Again, I think it's either better or worse than the Moonlit Butterfly. I think it's maybe only, I think it's than the Moonlit Butterfly. So yeah, I will not hear anybody say otherwise, that people think that Moonlit Butterfly is worse than Ceaseless Discharge, because there are some really bad fights and bosses in these games. Like, and listen, and From Software it's not exactly short of a lot of stuff in the gutter as well. Not like the actual gutter from DS2, but finally the I Am Golem. I suppose, but it's interesting. So I think it then some of the other fights. So because I think the arena's cool, its moveset's pretty interesting. The fact that you can make him fall off the edge is also quite unique. So quite high D tier, I suppose, is where I'm putting him. Now we move on to DS2, and DS2 has something like nearly 41 bosses. So get ready for some stretching because a lot of them are going to be like very low to mid tier. So rotten. This is basically like uh a slight. I think this is like a slightly worse version of the Quaylog fight. So that's probably why it's like an entire section below. Uh, Executioner's Chariot, a really cool idea, but it's just the actual fight against the two-headed horse is like not worth really the hype. So behind Maneater, Skeleton Lord, but at least this one actually feels like something of a more intimidating fight than the chariot. So probably like maybe yeah, that's a good spot. Covetous Demon. Has anyone ever died to the Covetous Demon? I'm pretty sure it is possible to lose to him, so that's probably the reason why I'm gonna write him slightly higher than the Ceaseless Discharge, because even though you could lose to like the Moonlit Butterfly for these stupid reasons, I can't think of any instance why anybody would want to lose to the Covetous Demon on purpose. Myfa, the Baneful Queen, kind of a bit of an issue that it's with like a lot of the Demon Souls bosses, as I think they're just sort of the gimmicks to them are a bit like they try not to be like gimmicks, and sometimes they do. So between like maybe the Armored Spider, that's probably where I'd put it. Smelter Demon is okay. So the reason why the Smelter Demon, the actual the OG one is better than the others is because the Smelter Demon has the satisfaction of the fact that it feels like a very the fight for it feels balanced at times, and because it's not always as balanced as it should be, is why it's sort of like it couldn't be any higher. I mean, you gotta think about that. Think about that in its context. When I rate things like Wolf, the when Sif and Flame Lurker are almost just behind the DS1 DLC bosses. Old Iron King. Again, there's not too much of a challenge to this one, but I think it's way more interesting than Seif, so I'll put him like above Seif. Score. This is once again just it's a slightly again more worse version that it's literally just the reskin of Quaylog, but I suppose for like its movesets and you could even cut off its tails. I suppose it's like better than than Vanguard and the Capra Demon. Royal Rat Authority. Again, lose to a fight for stupid reasons because they decide to make toxic dogs just in this fight for whatever reason is a really stupid idea that I wish we never got this. Prowling Makers and Congregation. This one's actually going to be in like the F, like the actual F tier itself, I suppose, like the F minus, because how can you lose to this fight though? It's easy by design, and that's just not it is. However, okay, so Last Giant is absolutely going. Last Giant is like it's so not difficult, this fight. It's painfully easy to beat the last, and again, by the time you actually get to the Last Giant, you'll probably at least maybe level like 20 or 21 by the time you get to it. So because if you've got like a decent weapon with like decent armor, there's no challenge to fighting like the Last Giant. You could literally fight Dragon like Rider before you even get to it. Duke's Deer Freya. This is the giant spider you fight in the Shaded Woods. Uh, Maybe slightly better than Man Eaters, I suppose. Or it could go here as well. I suppose. Um, Maybe I'm being I don't know if I'm like being too generous. What do you guys think about this so far? Do you think this is like okay ranking? I suppose I'm sort of thinking this is all right. Twin Dragon Riders. Okay, Okay, let me guys explain to you what the Twin Dragon Riders fight is. It's like the first Dragon Rider you fought earlier in the game, except there's a second one. So it's better than the Royal Rat Authority, only slightly. In fact, actually, before we even go any further, where's the original Dragon Rider? Yeah, just so we can save the expediency. There we are. That's like the easiest decision yet. Is that the original Dragon Rider is only slightly better because again, it's not a hard fight. Anyway, where were we? Looking Glass Knight. This is like I think a better version of the old monk fight because you are actually fighting two opponents this time. So maybe better than Maiden Astray. I think that's okay. Demon of Song. I like this fight. It's pretty standard as far as like as fights for this game go. So better than the Iron Golem. I'd say that's actually I'm cool with that. Velstad, the Royal Aegis, probably one of the better fights in DS2. There's certainly a lot more things going for it, I suppose. So I would say better than. I don't think he's better than the Looking Glass Knight, but it's certainly better than a lot he wants. And also, don't worry, guys, we are going to get some like really high stacked ones as well because I think like the higher we go is when we should like be seeing a lot more. Well, there should be like fewer ones in like the S and the S plus tiers, because I imagine like if you were to rank all of them for what they are, and Vendrick, for example, is like definitely not going to be in that category because you can't. I've never lost to Vendrick before. I've always Spider than Eric because I suppose it's more interesting. I suppose how you fight Vendrick, but it's this is one where he just like walks around his tomb for no reason, and then you just have to like kill him. That's the entire fight. Guardian Dragon is like I don't know, maybe it's slightly Last Giant. The Ancient Dragon is definitely not going anywhere. It's actually, you know what? I've got a better idea. There we are. I'm more satisfied with that. Giant Lord, more like Giant Load, and it's literally it's a reskin of the what is it with like DS2 and having like several bosses that are just reskins. Even the Guardian Dragon is basically just it's just like an NPC, a normal NPC by the time you the Oddcast documentary it's kind of hard to go through his archive. That should be pretty interesting, and well, by the time I come to like talking about Oddcast myself, I imagine that's gonna be like worth. I've been basically at work making like videos all day long, and I just sort of wanted to like chill for a bit before we sign off for the night by doing like just a tier list, so to speak. So if you want it's a bit different from the norm, I'm sure you will. It's all right. Don't worry about that, Sushi. It's good to have you here anyway. So, Dark Lurker is probably the sort of the Dark Lurker fight is probably like it's more than it's more than above average for like for actual for if as far as like a Dark Souls 2 fight goes. So again, this is only like the third time fourth time I should say that we've actually a DS2 boss this high up on the list. So moving down a bit further, and again, just look about how much we've got to go through as well. So and many of these are just like mini bosses. Some of these are just like, I mean, look at the scale for Elden Ring as well. I don't even know how you could even like accompany a lot of these. So X3 and like for just how many times they pop up. So and like this, the black box of death. Anyway, let's get back on track. The Pursuer. This is the NPC that you have to like. It's basically tracks you, and it acts as like a nemesis. So Pursuer, again, better on average for what it actually was set out to do as like an actual nemesis for you. So actually, I'll tell you what, maybe better than Made in Australia. I think it's like better mechanically as well. I'm satisfied with that. Moving for down at Throne Watcher and Defender. It's a good fight for like a double boss fight. I'm not too sure if it's like how high do I want to rank this? Maybe possibly better than Storm King. I just don't think there's like it's good. But it's just sort of like maybe a little bit of case of no, I've never played Wolong. I've heard there's a lot of things about like Dragon's Dome as well. I'm sure it probably might be like a very Souls like game, but I'll certainly have to think about looking into that because there's I'm not kidding. There's like so many things from like video games are released from like Metroidvanias to Souls like games. So there's definitely would be like an interesting course to work out like which ones to like talk over and which ones explore. Even like Neo Automania is sort of a bit like this in vein. Nishandra, not much to say about this one either. It's like it's it's just there's no challenge to it. Oldia, Scholar of the First Sin, is well uh I like it. The lore for it is good. It's just for whatever reason they decided to make him in Scholar of the First Sin edition just to make him a boss. Just to it. This feels like the most pointless inclusion to have just for a boss fight for no other reason than just saying that, oh wait, we haven't killed Aldia, so we better make it. We gotta throw him in there somehow. Which just I don't understand. Also, it's there's just no point to it outside of its lore. Young Hollow, where knowing this, do you still desire peace? Grave. Okay, so this is literally just the reskins of like NPCs that you have to fight. So for again, because again, reskins and just like bad renditions of reskins, it's a gang squad inside a gang squad area. Elena, Squalid Queen, the first one for like the Sunken Crown. So I suppose maybe a little bit below Allant. I again just it's not that the lore does not it's not good for DS2, but the gameplay is primarily what it should be for. But the gameplay is like incredible. Like I don't understand how you it just after 10 years as well. I don't fit. DS2 has huge issues with its level design, its boss design, the actual controls, and it's just the game is like so it's if you so many like backward steps. You know what I mean? Sin the Slumbering Dragon, definitely one of the better ones. Oh, absolutely, I will say that for Sing. Actually, you know what? Because I think he's actually better than Flame Lurker. So now we're actually getting a nice fill up like of the C tier bosses, and whilst it is slow going at first, there's still going to be plenty of room to accompany like the ladder top half of the list. Yet encountered our first S plus boss, but the criteria for that is going to be like either one or two boss fights. It's the blue smelter demon. What absolutely that this in terms of like reskin bosses, smelter demon is absolutely the worst. Which is kind of interesting because we go straight to Fume Knight, and Fume Knight is it's either the hardest like fight you can actually have in like the DS2 DLCs. So I think he's I think he's better than Flame Lurker because again his second stage is way more interesting, and the fact is that Fume Knight can and absolutely will kill you on either the first or second attack. So there's a little bit more of like a danger with making mistakes compared to Flame Lurker, I suppose. So Alon, this is for my money my favorite fight outside of the Burnt Ivory King in the DLC. So I would actually say, actually, I do think he's better than Funai because the actual like the way you fight him and and so long story of how he stood by side the old Iron King it's far more interesting than working out just where the hell Fume Knight came from. Then of course we get via the tiger you have to fight in Liam Loyce. I think he's more interesting to fight than Seif, absolutely. What isn't, however, interesting is the fact that you've got to go through his two other reskins in the worst zone in all of the games. Well, actually, no, because here's a bit of an interesting like take that I because not only did I not only did I do a list of all of the Dark Souls bosses, but I also did a list of all the areas in the game. I still am going to say to this day, ladies and gentlemen, that Lost Izalith is worse than the Frigid Outskirts, only by a very small margin. But I actually made the decision that it's worse. I think the Lost Izalith is actually, if for no other reason, then Lost Izalith is finished, but they put it out there anyway. So that's the only reason why it's like as low as that. Um, Burnt Ivory King, best fight in Dark Souls 2. That's no question. In fact, actually, you know what? I think it's actually better than the Sanctuary Guardian. Yeah, I'm perfectly satisfied with that because it's probably just as hard as Artorias. There's more going on, and the actual development of like the lore of the old chaos is like just the bed of chaos, but manifested in such a bizarre new way is really cool. The old Dragon Slayer, however, I know that there is a bit of an interesting idea for this, and the fact that it's not just Ornstein, it's the fact that it's meant to be a somebody like trying to cosplay as Ornstein, but it's still not particularly that good. The fight's perfectly fine. It's just why exactly do we need to fight somebody we know fine well? This is meant to be DS Dark Souls. Take everything about the first game and just put it in the second game too. Flextile Sentry. You know, see what I mean? Maybe a slightly better version of the Armored Spider. Again, as far as like again for another DPS test, I think it's perfectly fine. It's just not really too much to say. I like the Belfry Gargoyles fights because there's a bit of more of it like an incentive towards danger with how many you have to fight. I still don't think it's that good because ultimately it's just a reason. Ruin Sentinels, I think it's maybe probably better than like these ones as well because at least with the Ruin Sentinels, it's the first time you have to like fight 3 NPCs on its own, so it gains points for that. Lost Sinner is way more interesting than it probably has any right to be. So I think it's maybe behind Penetrator, I suppose, because there are a lot of very basic fights where you just fight like humanoid enemies with just like huge weapons. So Lost Sinner gets that distinction. And for the final boss in Dark Souls 2, the literal second worst boss they ever came up with the Royal Rat Vanguard. And just look at the list of this what lies before you, ladies and gentlemen. D tier is, but I'd say average for the games they are part of. C tier is sort of, in my opinion, moving in the right direction for what they bring and the challenge involved. B tier is definitely a even better still, and the A, S, and S plus tiers are the literal best things in each of the games. So make of this what you will, because there's still all of Bloodborne, and there's still all of DS3, and then we have to go through all of the Elden Rings ones as well. Good. How on earth do we even? And here's the thing: I haven't even 100% completed Elden Ring, so I'm wondering whether we should just go all the way to Sekiro. Is that how we should do it? Or maybe I should just rank the ones we've already done. Do you think that's a good idea? Anyway, so we'll see about it. Okay, so The one Reborn is not the greatest fight, but I do prefer it actually then quite a lot because Bloodborne does play quite differently to the other games. So I'd say that's fine. I think it's more interesting than those two. Uh, Elbritus, Daughter of the Cosmos, definitely one of the best ones. Something that is again you're going to hear that's quite universal of Bloodborne is the fact that I think the challenge of the game is not so much from things that we're familiar with like a lot of the other games, but I think it's from the fact that actually when you can get into a rhythm about how you can take down enemies, it feels as if like the game already anticipated this and the scaling is for when you take damage is so much higher. So you've got to still be good at what you do. And though, because this is something like maybe Demon Souls and like the first two Dark Souls sort of have issues with, it's the fact that power creep isn't really an issue if you have like the best weapons in the game that can one shot anything you touch. Bloodborne doesn't really have this, so there's more balancing involved. So that's maybe why you're going to be seeing like a lot of Bloodborne fights ranked quite a lot higher. From my experience, Mikolash, host of not quite all of them. So low because at least they tried something different. But again, if we could say at least there's only like the Mikolash boss fight, then I'm more than glad to say at least it doesn't go any further. Murgo's Wet Nurse is, I think it's like maybe a little bit, not too much, maybe better than Skeleton Lords, Maneater, Jukes, better. I think this is a good one because I don't know, Murgo a little bit, just fighting the Wet Nurse was a bit like they were. I think it's almost got to the point where they were almost kind of like running out of ideas. So for what can we do? Can we give her wings? Okay. Can we give her like 6 blades? Okay. Can we create like a fog and make it into a multi-boss fight? Yeah. It just seemed like it was at the point of what else can we do? And is there anything we haven't done yet in this game? So we'll tick, tick, tick. Just it seems more for necessity they included Murgo than anything. I kid. It's still a good fight, all things considered. But even though like quite late into the game, they brought in like new ideas ahead of them. I'm not too sure if like it's like just it is what it is, I suppose. The amygdala. I know a lot of people don't like the amygdala boss fight, but I'm very like I think it's a decent challenge personally. I've never had issues with it, so there's that. Call that what you will. Mono Logarius, one of them easily one of the absolute best. Actually, I'm gonna rate better than Solon because I know again by the time you actually, if anybody out there who actually gets round to actually ever owning a PS4 or a PS5 and you actually play Bloodborne and you finally get to Castle Canehurst and you fight Logarius, you will thank that is like it's one of the great peaks of the game. And also you fight him on the rooftop of the castle. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so I'm going to go to sleep now. Okay, have a good night there. German, the first hunter. Oh God. It's either the best fight in. Well, it's probably well considering that again you have to go up against what's oh God the Orphan of Kos. But I still kid. I think German is still probably the best, and considering that this is like I'm actually going to surprise some of them. I actually think he's maybe. Actually, I think he's better than Gwyn. That's that might be like the first true controversial decision I make in this list. Is the fact that I think Gurman is better than Gwyn. What do you guys reckon? Do you think that's unjustified, or do you think that's seems perfectly okay on balance. Then, of course, well, ironically, it's followed immediately by the Moon Presence, which isn't bad for a fight, I suppose, but it's just sort of like for what it's meant to be like. There's the secret final boss. It's good, but I don't think it can like stack up to a lot of the better ones. Maybe actually slightly further down. Ludwig the Holy Blade. Now, we spoke a little bit earlier. Actually, I think this is like okay. Here's the issue. We have the because I do sort of want to rate it. It's either better or just slightly worse than Manus. Um. Okay, let's think about this. Manus is the hardest fight in in Dark Souls' DLC. Ludwig is not quite the hardest boss in its DLC. You get the Holy Blade by beating Ludwig, which is just the Moonlight Greatsword. Um, in the second phase for Ludwig is um uh I think I'm perfectly fine with it as it is. My true mentor and my guiding moonlight has given me courage to say this is where it should be. Then next, the living failures. You're not wrong because I don't think the fight's it's that bad. At least it's an actual fight, so that's probably why it's better than the last giant. I think it's better than the ancient dragon. The ancient dragon is just it's not a fight. You don't even need to fight it exactly either. So cleric beast. Um, I remember when I like played Bloodborne for the very first time, and when I fought because I fought Gascoigne, and then I fought the cleric beast. Beast is just sort of like a slightly worse version of something like the Taurus demon. So I'm gonna put him behind the Taurus demon for balance reasons, I suppose. Uh, Lady Maria, very hard fight. I do really appreciate its fight because this also began like a very curious train in a lot chain in a lot fights from software is that they have like a really badass femme fatale as like one of the later bosses in each game. So I'd say probably just a little bit below the Burnt Ivory King because I think or do I have Lady Maria better than the Burnt Ivory King? It's very hard to judge. That's the true purpose of the thing. Okay, Lawrence. I think it's maybe possibly slightly better than. I think something that actually, again, like I said before, one of the things that is going to elevate a lot of the Bloodborne fights is that I think they're quite a lot harder than a lot of the other games. Despite the fact that again you're wrestling with 30 FPS and that the game opening encourages you to be as aggressive as you can. I think and then so you can basically get the visceral strike and you can almost like break Lawrence's legs halfway through the fight. So for design reasons, that's a lot of reasons why a lot of these are going to be coming out on top. The Orphan, of course, is that's like the easiest. Like it's I'd say it's actually up all the way up here because I think the fight it's if you thought like there was like if you think Elbritus was like the hardest fight in the main game, maybe on par with Gurman. Orphan of Kos is the hardest fight in both the game and the Old Hunters DLC. Fittingly, he is the very last obstacle in your way. He is, well, as you might suspect, he is the only thing that's stopping you from finding out the very last secret that Bloodborne has up its sleeve. Because I originally did like this DLC before I fought Gurman, and they talked about being mysteriously free, which is just sort of like. And speaking, oh, here comes Gascoigne as well. So you're actually given something of a choice in this, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to fight Gascoigne or if you want to fight the Cleric Beast first, for my money, I challenged Gascoigne first, and I beat it the very first time by getting it down to 1 HP and then throwing a rock at him and killed him. So maybe not the best ways to describe that, but it's definitely one of the best ones because it's basically fighting an actual like NPC as a player. In fact, I'm actually going to rank him even higher because it's that anticipation and the fact that he breaks out babbling about being consumed by blood halfway into it is fantastically atmospheric, and it sets the game off on the right foot always and almost automatically as well. The Bloodstarved Beast. Again, it's one of those ones where I beat it the very first time I fought it, so it's not difficult, but it's an interest. It's a different fight. The Vicar Amelia. Okay, I suppose, but like again, I don't think it's like too special. Witches of Hemwick. Easy. Next, Dark Peace Paul. Maybe slightly better than Amelia. I ran into the issue, and it's something that quite a lot of people did with Paul, was the fact that I fought him very early in the game when I was just simply not ready, when I was like abducted outside Cathedral Ward, and then I got taken to some strange place, and then would you look at that? We're now fighting the Dark Beast. So Shadows of Yharnam is definitely again up there for the boss for the game it's worth. So better than the Bell Gargoyles. That's maybe he's probably better than maybe better than Swelter Team as well, actually, the more I think about it. Because it's not just fighting free NPCs, it's about fighting like in enclosed spaces as well. And it's a much more successful version than the Ruin Sentinels, and that's why I'm justifying it, putting it that. Rom, the Vacuous Spider. Not a great deal to this one. I suppose he's like maybe better than average for the game it's part of, but I think that still puts him like maybe along the lines of maybe no. Actually, I think he's better than that. So maybe better than Freya, probably because this is a bit more of an interesting fight with a giant spider. The Celestial Emissary. This is basically just like an appetizer. So I'm putting him like putting it quite low. You can't really lose to this fight. And then, of course, something you're going to get a lot of quite here is a lot of the Chalice dungeon fights. But because these sorts of things are just sort of one and the same, I'm not really going to rank the Chalice bosses because there's nothing really to the lore or to the actual game that's really like worth it. So that's just sort of like what we want, something a bit different. And also, because I sort of like I'm feeling the pinch a little bit. I'm thinking that maybe the better thing to do right now is to like maybe come back to this list maybe another time, because we're already like really pushed for time at the moment, and we've basically filled up with this list with 4 whole games, and there's like just the amount of entrants we've put on this is like even like the worst of like the Bloodborne fights, I still think are really good for what they are, which is again curtailed to the fact that a lot of the Bloodborne fights are like the better ones are like better on average than a lot of the weaker ones, which also explains why things like Orphan of Kos, Gurman, Ludwig, Leda Maria, Mardo Logarius, and Albritas are like so high. They are like 6 of the best fights in Bloodborne are in the top half of the list. And this is even before we even get to discussing things like Pontiff Sullivan or Sister Freed or even Dark Eater Medea. And before we even get into talk about characters like Genichiro and then, of course, likes of Godric the Grafted and Rykard. And again, I know fine well because the list for Elden Ring is so exclusive. We're mostly going to just be talking about like the actual like bosses like Morg and Morgart and we're probably including maybe like the Regal Ancestor Spirit. And well, again, because it's a good thing that there are so many fights in Elden Ring anyway. It's going to make things a lot easier for us, all things considered. Lich Dragon, the Fire Giant, the Red Wolf of Radagon, the anytime Crucible Knight is like an intense moment of panic because you're going to get your ass sandwiched and then hand it back to you. And then, of course, you have to have things like patches you have to fight. And bear in mind, in the middle of like all of this is where you actually get to fights like Rykard, if I can even find him. Where even is like Rykard? I can't even see him. Well, maybe he's sort of like been thrown in the serpent because Radagon and the Elden Beast are like grouped together. Don't worry, by the time we get to doing this, we'll be able to talk about this better. So I hope all of you guys have, well, enjoyed this sort of like different change of pace just to try and do something a bit different for this list. And, well, enjoy the rest of your night, ladies and gentlemen. And it was good for hanging out and can't wait to go through like the rest of this enormous list with you guys again next time. So thank you very much for watching again and hanging out, and I'll see all of you guys again next time. Thank you.